Death Note was banned by three major countries: China, Russia, and Turkey. China has banned several popular anime titles, and Death Note is one of them. The ban came during 2005 to 2007, right around the time it debuted in the anime market. It was not a simple ban either. They banned the manga and all merchandise related to Death Note as well. It all started because the series became extremely popular among Chinese kids, who began making fake Death Note notebooks and writing down the names of classmates they disliked. The trend spread so rapidly that it caught the attention of China's Ministry of Culture. Authorities concluded that the series was glorifying the concept of death in the minds of the youth and labeled it as Western propaganda promoting hate and violence against its own people. Following this, China's Ministry of Culture took even stricter action and permanently banned Death Note in 2015. Russia banned Death Note on psychological grounds, citing it as mentally harmful content. A court in St. Petersburg ruled against it in 2013, banning it primarily to protect minors from harmful online media and self-harm influences. Russian authorities stated that the series glorifies uncontrolled power and that the ease with which murders are carried out in Death Note was having a damaging effect on its young audience. Turkey was the third country to ban Death Note. Unlike China and Russia, Turkey never made a public announcement regarding the ban, but indirectly enforced it by having all Turkish broadcasters stop airing the series. The reason mirrored what had happened in China. Children in Turkish schools began making fake Death Notebooks and writing down the names of teachers they disliked, which ultimately pushed authorities to pull it off the air. Next, Pokemon is the most popular anime of all time and the highest revenue-generating franchise in anime history. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, and Turkey all banned it, and the reasons were rooted in religious sentiments. On multiple grounds, the franchise was considered to be against Islamic law. The Saudi committee argued that Pokemon indirectly promotes Zionism by featuring six-pointed stars on certain Pokemon cards, which they viewed as an indirect reference to the Star of David. The second reason was Pokemon card trading, which they considered a form of gambling, something that is strictly forbidden under Islamic law. The third reason was the evolution theme, where Pokemon evolve over time, which was seen as harmful and contrary to religious beliefs. Turkey's ban had a different trigger. A child jumped off a balcony while imitating a Pokemon character. However, all four countries eventually lifted the ban and allowed the show to air with limited restrictions. The next country to ban Pokemon was Japan, but only a single episode. In 1997, an episode titled Electric Soldier Porygon aired, featuring an electric attack by Pikachu that caused rapid red and blue flashing lights. The result was alarming. Between 600 to 700 children fell ill, reporting seizures, dizziness, vomiting, and blurred vision, with most requiring hospital treatment. The majority were diagnosed with photosensitive epilepsy. Following the incident, the Pokemon anime was pulled off air in Japan for several months, and strict broadcast guidelines were put in place to prevent similar occurrences. That episode never aired anywhere else in the world, and for the same reason, it was also banned in India. Next, Attack on Titan is the biggest anime of the modern era, and as it grew in popularity, several countries moved to ban or restrict it. China was among the first, banning it in 2013 for violating censorship guidelines on multiple fronts: Titans consuming humans, graphic on-screen deaths, and the portrayal of fear and hopelessness. The Chinese government concluded that it wasn't any single scene that was a problem, but rather the entire premise and story of the show that conflicted with their content standards. To be straightforward, this level of brutal content was never meant for children to begin with. It is better suited for teenagers and adults above 18. China eventually lifted the ban, though the show remains censored on several streaming platforms. Malaysia and Russia took a similar but less aggressive approach, choosing not to fully ban it but heavily censoring it for the same reasons as China: the sheer volume of brutal and graphic content throughout the series. South Korea handled it differently. They censored it but never issued an official ban, and their reason was historical rather than content-based. The military uniforms worn by characters in Attack on Titan closely resembled those used during Japan's imperial occupation of Korea, which lasted from 1910 to 1945. That period represents one of the darkest chapters in Korean history. Korea lost its independence, its language and culture were suppressed, its people were forced into labor, and many women were subjected to sexual slavery by the military. For South Koreans, seeing those uniforms on screen was not just uncomfortable, it was a direct reminder of historical trauma and oppression. Next, Demon Slayer. China imposed heavy restrictions on Demon Slayer, citing intense fighting scenes, dark supernatural themes, and excessive blood. Rather than a permanent ban, China kept it on limited access and went as far as censoring female character outfits, including the attire Tenjin's wives, Nezuko's clothing, and the scene where Mitsuri runs toward Tanjiro. South Korea did not ban it outright, but raised a significant issue over Tanjiro's earrings, which feature a rising sun pattern known as Hanafuda earrings. South Korea associated this design with Imperial Japan and had the symbol removed from the anime, manga, and all Demon Slayer merchandise. Middle Eastern countries also place restrictions on the series for 3 reasons: excessive blood, the portrayal of demons, and its dark storytelling, all of which were considered inconsistent with Islamic values. There was no official ban, but certain channels refused to air it. Demon Slayer was more accessible online than on traditional television across the region. Next, High School of the Dead is a zombie apocalypse anime centered on intense action and survival horror. In 2015, China's Ministry of Culture banned it alongside 60 other anime titles for containing extreme violence, zombie horror, and sexual content deemed socially immoral. Australia restricted it. New Zealand temporarily banned it in 2013, and many other countries slapped it with an 18+ rating due to its depiction of school-age characters in adult situations. Next, Naruto, one of the legendary Big Three shonen anime, also faced restrictions across multiple countries. The United States aired a censored version due to violence and blood. Turkey imposed a temporary ban after children began imitating ninja moves, with authorities concluding the show was contributing to psychological aggression in kids. China restricted it and pulled certain episodes entirely. In India, it was heavily edited. Blood, violence, and dialogue like the sexy jutsu technique were all considered inappropriate for younger audiences. Next, Dragon Ball Z never received a global ban but faced widespread restrictions. China flagged it for its brutal fight sequences. India aired it with edits, removing adult humor. The United States altered significant amounts of dialogue. In Mexico and Latin America, it was temporarily pulled after religious groups objected to the portrayal of magical powers and supernatural abilities as religiously harmful. Next, The Camellia Girl, also known as Shoujo Tsubaki, was released in 1992 and directed by Hiroshi Harada. The film became infamous for graphic violence and deeply disturbing themes. In Japan, the film was never officially released in mainstream theaters due to concerns over obscenity and potential violations of laws. Distribution abroad faced major legal obstacles, especially in the United Kingdom under obscenity regulations. United States, no federal ban exists, but the film is restricted to adult audiences. While not officially outlawed nationwide in Japan, it struggled to secure public exhibition and effectively became an underground film. It wasn't mainstream controversial. It was reputationally toxic. Next, Hunter x Hunter. Hunter x Hunter is a masterpiece. It's layered, it's complex, it has some of the most thoughtful writing in all of shonen anime. It also ended up on China's 2015 ban list, and that says a lot about how China approaches content regulation, because the quality of the storytelling is completely irrelevant to whether the content meets the government standards. The primary concern with Hunter x Hunter in China was its violence, the Chimera Ant arc in particular, which is widely considered one of the greatest arcs in anime history, is also relentlessly brutal and psychologically intense. Characters are killed in graphic ways, themes of dehumanization and mass death are central to the story, and the emotional weight of the violence is very deliberately heavy. China's content guidelines don't allow for that level of violent content, and so the show was banned from Chinese online platforms in 2015, along with the broader wave of titles that were swept up in that crackdown. Next, Goblin Slayer. The anime debuted in October 2018 and immediately became one of the most controversial anime premieres in recent memory. The first episode contains an extended and deeply disturbing depiction of sexual violence, which caused an enormous backlash online and drew the attention of regulators in several countries. In Australia, the show faced serious scrutiny from the Australian Classification Board. Australia has a system where content that cannot be classified under any available rating is effectively banned from commercial distribution. While Goblin Slayer was able to remain on streaming platforms in Australia following the review, physical distribution was significantly impacted, and the show became a flashpoint for broader conversations about what kind of content should be permissible in anime. New Zealand's Office of Film and Literature Classification also took a hard look at the series. New Zealand has historically been quite strict about content involving sexual violence, and Goblin Slayer's first episode in particular was exactly the kind of content their classification system is designed to restrict. The show's streaming availability in New Zealand was limited, and retailers were cautious about stocking physical releases. Next is Sword Art Online. Sword Art Online, one of the most popular anime of the past decade globally, and it too was caught up in China's 2015 crackdown. Now, SAO is a bit of an interesting case because compared to some of the other shows on that list, it's not overtly gory or sexually explicit in its original broadcast version. The concern in China was more about the cumulative themes of the show: characters trapped in virtual reality, fighting for survival, dying in a game that's connected to their real lives. There was also a broader regulatory environment at play, where China was simultaneously trying to crack down on video game addiction among youth, and an anime that glorified immersive virtual reality gaming environments was seen as counterproductive to that goal. SAO was also flagged for some of its romantic content and certain scenes involving its female characters that were deemed inappropriate. Next is Rurouni Kenshin, the beloved classic anime about a wandering swordsman in Meiji-era Japan, and its banning is a genuinely unique case in this entire video, because it wasn't banned because of anything in the show itself. The content of Rurouni Kenshin is not particularly controversial. It's a historical action-adventure with great characters and solid storytelling. The ban came because of its creator. In 2017, Nobuhiro Watsuki, the manga artist who created Rurouni Kenshin, was charged by Japanese police for possession of sexual abuse material. He admitted to the charges and paid a fine. In response, the manga was immediately suspended in Japan, and distributors in Australia and New Zealand pulled their releases of both the manga and the anime. It was a decision rooted in ethics rather than content, a refusal to continue generating revenue and support for a product associated with someone convicted of such serious crimes. This case is unique in the world of anime bans because it raises questions that go beyond content regulation. Do you separate art from artist? What's the ethical responsibility of distributors when a creator is convicted of a serious crime? Australia and New Zealand's distributors made a clear choice, and it's a choice that's been debated in fan communities ever since. These were some of the anime that governments around the world chose to ban, restrict, or censor for varying reasons. This video is purely factual. As you know, guys, I neither support nor oppose any government's decision related to their anime stuff. I simply presented the facts as they are, because I believe that the anime travels globally, but every country draws its line in a different place. Comment for part 2 and subscribe for more such videos.